Imagine waking up one morning to a world where everything seems exactly as it was yesterday. Your phone lights up with messages, coffee brews in the kitchen, cars hum along the street outside, yet something invisible and heavy presses on your chest. You can't name it, but you feel it. A quiet estrangement from yourself, as if the life you're living is somehow not entirely your own. It's not depression, not anxiety, not even boredom. It's subtler and stranger, a sense that your soul is being slowly negotiated away, piece by piece, under the smiling face of normalcy. This isn't a dystopian nightmare. It's the ordinary condition of modern man, and Fyodor Dostoyevsky saw it coming more than a century ago. He wrote of people who had everything, comfort, knowledge, even progress, yet felt hollow, restless, and divided. He intuited a paradox that still haunts us. The more we build a world designed to liberate us from suffering, the more we risk becoming slaves to emptiness. Look around you. Everywhere, the promise of choice and convenience, endless entertainment to banish silence, infinite scrolls to fill the void. Yet when the lights dim and the screen goes dark, what remains? Why do so many of us feel both free and trapped, both informed and lost, both connected and unbearably alone? Could it be that the very forces that claim to enrich our lives are the ones quietly depleting our souls? You've probably felt it yourself. That uneasy awareness when you pause from the noise and realize how quickly days dissolve into a blur of tasks and pleasures, leaving behind no enduring meaning. It's the moment when you suspect you're not living, but being lived, by algorithms, by habits, by expectations you never consciously chose. Dostoyevsky's characters wrestled with this same tension, the terror of absolute freedom on one side and the suffocating comfort of submission on the other. What if? The real danger isn't poverty, ignorance, or oppression, but a subtler form of self-erasure, a slow surrender of the soul disguised as progress? What if the hunger for distraction is not a harmless indulgence, but a symptom of something deeper, a spiritual malnutrition? And what if the very idea of improving ourselves without confronting our inner contradictions is the greatest illusion of all? This is the paradox Dostoyevsky whispers across time, that a society obsessed with security and pleasure may unknowingly breed despair, that a person shielded from suffering may lose the capacity for meaning, that the soul of modern man might be endangered not by what we fear, but by what we love. He described it in the trembling voice of his characters, torn between reason and chaos, craving both dignity and degradation, terrified of freedom, yet revolted by submission. Does this sound dramatic? Perhaps. But pause for a moment. Think of the last time you felt fully alive, risking something, choosing freely, standing on the edge of uncertainty. Compare it to the gray comfort of scrolling, of routine, of safe but shallow pleasures. Which feels more human? Which feels more like a soul at work rather than a machine performing its program? The question that emerges, quietly but insistently, is not how do we achieve more comfort, but what are we sacrificing for it? When every desire can be gratified with a swipe, what happens to the inner muscles of restraint, longing, and transcendence? When every belief can be mocked, deconstructed, or monetized, what happens to faith? Not necessarily religious faith, but faith in anything larger than the self. Dostoyevsky does not give easy answers, and neither will this exploration. But he leaves a warning like a flare across history. Modern man, dazzled by progress, may forget the price of his soul. The cost isn't paid all at once, but in quiet increments. One compromise, one distraction, one surrender at a time. In the following section, we will peel back the surface of this paradox to uncover its psychological and philosophical roots, how ideas about freedom, progress, and selfhood inherited from centuries past have shaped the very way you experience your own inner life. The unease you feel, the sense that something vital is slipping through your fingers even as your life becomes more optimized, is not just personal, it's structural, woven into the way modern consciousness has been built. The danger Dostoyevsky foresaw was not simply materialism or technology. It was a spiritual architecture that trades depth for control, mystery for predictability. From birth, you're taught to manage yourself like an enterprise. You measure your worth in productivity, market your image as a brand, curate your persona for maximum approval. It seems empowering, but what happens inside when your identity becomes a product to be consumed by others, by algorithms, even by your own self-surveillance? Nietzsche warned of this inversion, calling it the age of the last man, creatures who desire only comfort and safety, blinking at the stars with no more longing for greatness. Carl Jung pushed further, describing the psyche as a vast territory of light and shadow. The more you repress your shadow, the parts of yourself you disown, the more it manifests as unconscious compulsion. You begin to live not from freedom but from reflex, making choices that feel like yours but are actually dictated by hidden drives. Society, eager to avoid discomfort, rewards you for this fragmentation. Stay positive, stay busy, stay entertained. Don't look too closely at what's beneath. This is the hidden problem. Modern man, in his quest to master the external world, has lost the courage to confront his inner one. We have developed tools to map the stars, split the atom, and decode the genome, yet we flinch from sitting one in a quiet room with our own thoughts. We call this progress. But what if it's flight? What if our achievements are, at least in part, elaborate strategies to escape the terrifying freedom of being truly human? Dostoyevsky dramatized this in Notes from Underground, where his anti-hero sneers at the idea of rational self-interest. He mocks the utopian dream of a society so efficient and comfortable that all suffering is abolished. In such a world, he says, man would still rebel. He would shatter the perfect system just to prove his freedom. Why? Because something in us refuses to be reduced to a mechanism of pleasure and pain. Because even our destructive impulses hint at a deeper hunger for transcendence, for authenticity, for meaning beyond mere utility. Philosopher Jean-Paul Sartre would later echo this when he wrote that man is condemned to be free. Freedom is not a luxury but a burden, and many of us flee from it into systems, identities, and distractions that tell us who we are. Aldous Huxley saw this coming too, a brave new world where control is maintained not through terror but through pleasure. People would not have to be forced to obey, they would love their servitude. Can you feel how these warnings converge? Jung speaks of the shadow, Nietzsche of the last man, Dostoyevsky of the underground rebel, Huxley of the pleasure-drugged citizen. Different languages for the same predicament. The modern soul caught between its craving for safety and its need for meaning, between a curated self and an authentic self, between the seductions of progress and the primal demand for freedom. The psychological consequence is subtle but devastating. When you avoid your own depths, your doubts, your contradictions, your capacity for both good and evil, you don't actually get rid of them. They go underground. They leak out as anxiety, compulsions, addictions, resentment. You sense something is wrong but can't trace it. You reach for another distraction, another achievement, another dose of affirmation. The cycle continues. And because it continues on a massive scale, it shapes culture itself. A society full of individuals estranged from their own souls becomes restless, polarized, and easily manipulated. People seek scapegoats for the emptiness they cannot name. They cling to ideologies, movements, and tribal identities that promise certainty. They vilify anyone who mirrors their own disowned shadow, all while believing they are acting freely. This is why Dostoyevsky's warning still cuts so deep. He wasn't merely critiquing a political system or moral code. He was diagnosing a timeless vulnerability in human nature. The more we externalize freedom into gadgets, markets, or governments, the more we risk neglecting the only freedom that truly matters, the ability to confront ourselves without flinching. We are standing at that threshold now. The surface of life has never been smoother, yet the undercurrent of despair runs faster. We have more information but less wisdom, more choice but less clarity, more connection but less intimacy. And beneath it all, the same question Dostoyevsky posed through his characters. Will we face the abyss within, or will we continue to build ever more elaborate ways to avoid it? In the next section, we'll follow this current deeper, tracing the unseen consequences, how this hidden problem quietly infiltrates not only our inner lives, but our relationships, politics, and culture, shaping the very way reality feels. The erosion of the soul does not announce itself with alarms. It seeps quietly, like water through stone, reshaping you from within while you go about your day. You tell yourself you're simply busy, that everyone feels this way, that this is just life in the modern world. But the symptoms are everywhere, and once you start to see them, it's impossible to unsee. Start with your own mind. Notice how difficult it has become to sustain attention. Can you reach for your phone before you even know why? How silence feels unbearable. This is not a trivial quirk. It's the nervous system adapting to an environment of constant novelty. Neurologists call it dopamine-driven behavior loops. Your brain, conditioned by micro-rewards, becomes restless in the absence of stimulation. The result? You lose the ability to linger with your own thoughts, the very space where insight and meaning are born. Now look at your relationships. People complain of loneliness even while surrounded by messages, likes, and endless opportunities to connect. Yet intimacy requires vulnerability, patience, and a willingness to sit with discomfort, the very qualities eroded by a culture of instant gratification. So we skim along the surface of one another's lives, mistaking digital traces for presence. We share fragments of ourselves, but rarely our depths. Slowly, the muscles of empathy atrophy. This fragmentation bleeds into the collective. A society of distracted individuals becomes a society easy to manipulate. Algorithms designed to maximize engagement, not truth, learn to weaponize your attention against you. Outrage outperforms nuance. Echo chambers calcify. The public square turns into a hall of mirrors where everyone is talking, but no one is listening. Dostoyevsky, who witnessed the revolutionary ferment of 19th century Russia, understood how quickly alienated souls can swing from apathy to fanaticism, from quiet despair to collective violence. He saw that the real danger is not ideological difference, but spiritual emptiness masquerading as conviction. Think of the underground man again, proud of his rebellion but secretly craving to be told what to do. Modern life has produced millions of such figures, outwardly autonomous, inwardly adrift. People who claim to want freedom but find it intolerable in practice. People who surrender their agency to systems, influences, or ideologies, just to escape the burden of choosing. It is a subtle form of self-annihilation, not a bullet or a chain, but a gradual outsourcing of the will. This is why small, seemingly benign habits matter. Every time you numb a difficult feeling instead of facing it, you teach your psyche that truth is unbearable. Every time you outsource your judgment to a crowd, you teach your soul that it has no voice. Every time you trade depth for distraction, you practice the art of disappearing. Do this long enough, and you wake up one day to find that you no longer know what you believe, what you want, or who you are. The cultural consequences are equally insidious. When a critical mass of people live in this state, politics devolves into spectacle, morality into branding, spirituality into self-help platitudes. Movements rise and fall, promising salvation, but rarely address the underlying emptiness. The result is chronic instability, a cycle of disillusionment and renewed hope, outrage and apathy. Sartre's insight becomes literal. We are condemned to be free, yet we flee from it, building systems to hide from our own responsibility. And yet, within this bleak diagnosis lies a strange opportunity. The cracks in our collective facade are also openings. The very discomfort you feel when you're alone with your thoughts, the unease when a notification doesn't arrive, the hunger for something real, these are not failures. They are signals from the deeper self, reminders that you are more than a consumer, more than a node in a network, more than a collection of reflexes. They are the soul's way of refusing extinction. But the soul cannot be saved by more of the same. No new app, ideology, or productivity system will restore what has been lost. Only a radical shift in how you relate to yourself and the world can do that. Dostoyevsky understood this too. His characters find redemption not through comfort but through confrontation, by facing their shadows, embracing suffering as a teacher, and choosing responsibility over escape. The question is whether modern man is willing to do the same. Will we continue to polish the walls of our cages, or will we risk stepping out into the raw, uncertain air of freedom? The answer begins with a rebellion, not against society per se, but against our own habits of avoidance. In the next section, we'll explore the rebellion, how to break free, the counterintuitive moves, the inner acts of defiance, and the mindset shifts that can help you reclaim the sovereignty of your own soul. Breaking free does not begin with overthrowing governments or smashing devices. It begins with a far more unsettling act, turning inward and reclaiming what you've abandoned. Dostoyevsky's characters rarely escape by fleeing their circumstances. They awaken by confronting the very forces they've tried to avoid: guilt, shame, contradiction, despair. In this sense, rebellion is not a public spectacle, but a private revolution. The first act of rebellion is to pause. In a culture addicted to speed, stillness is subversive. When you sit in silence without reaching for your phone, you are refusing the invisible contracts of distraction. You are telling your nervous system, "I will feel what I feel." This is not easy. At first, it feels like withdrawal, but slowly you recover an ancient capacity, the ability to be present with yourself. Jung called this the confrontation with the unconscious, the beginning of real individuation. The second act is honesty. Modern life trains you to curate, edit, and optimize your self-image. But the parts you hide don't vanish, they grow in the dark. The rebellion is to bring them into light, not to broadcast them for applause, but to witness them without flinching. This is shadow work in its rawest form, owning your anger, your envy, your weakness, your secret longings. When you do this, you stop being a stranger to yourself. The algorithms lose a bit of their power. A crowd's opinion matters less. You begin to feel solid again. Third, you must cultivate restraint, not as self-punishment, but as freedom. In Dostoyevsky's world, suffering is not romanticized, but acknowledged as inevitable. The question is whether you meet it voluntarily or by force. Practicing restraint, delaying gratification, fasting from distractions, choosing silence over noise, is a way of meeting discomfort on your own terms. Viktor Frankl, forged in the camps of Auschwitz, called this the last of human freedoms, to choose your attitude in any given circumstance. Restraint is how you rebuild that muscle. Fourth, seek depth over novelty. Our culture worships the new, but the soul thrives on the deep. Read one great book slowly instead of 10 quickly. Have one difficult, unguarded conversation instead of a dozen superficial ones. Create something, a journal entry, a painting, a moment of genuine service, not for likes but for its own sake. In these acts, you reclaim the forgotten truth that meaning is not consumed but cultivated. And finally, accept the burden of freedom. This is the hardest and most liberating step. It means no longer blaming society, algorithms, or your past for every choice you make. It means recognizing that the same freedom that terrifies you is also your birthright. Sartre wrote that man is nothing else but what he makes of himself. Dostoyevsky would add, only when you stop hiding behind systems can you discover who you are. None of this is glamorous. It does not produce instant serenity or a neatly optimized self. It will at times feel like loss, but it is also a kind of homecoming. Each small act of defiance, the pause before a distraction, the honest look at your shadow, the chosen discomfort, the deeper conversation, reawakens the soul's memory of itself. You begin to sense a power you had forgotten, the power to choose not just what you do, but who you become. And as more people practice this inner rebellion, something shifts in the collective as well. A society of self-aware individuals is far harder to manipulate. Outrage loses its addictive flavor. Conversations regain nuance. Communities form not around shared distractions but shared meaning. The very fabric of culture changes, not by decree, but by the slow accumulation of souls refusing to vanish. This, Dostoyevsky might say, is the only rebellion worth waging, not against some distant oppressor, but against the habits and illusions that shrink your own humanity. It is not a retreat from the world, but a re-entry into it as a whole person, capable of real freedom, real responsibility, real love. We have traced the problem, its roots, and the possibility of rebellion. Yet one question remains. If you dare to take this path, what lies on the other side? What is the ultimate truth that makes sense of all this struggle? In the final section, we will turn to the ultimate truth, the final, most powerful realization, the insight that dissolves the illusion and reframes the very meaning of freedom, suffering, and the soul of modern man. The final, most powerful realization. You have paused. You have begun to look inward, to peel away the illusions, to stand, at least for moments, without distraction. And in that silence, something unexpected begins to happen. The panic you feared in the emptiness begins to soften. Beneath the noise and craving, beneath even the shadow you dreaded to meet, there is a stillness that feels strangely familiar, like recognizing a face you had forgotten. This is the paradox Dostoyevsky hid in plain sight. The abyss you've been avoiding is not a void but a mirror. When you dare to look directly into it, you do not vanish. You begin to see yourself, not the persona, not the curated identity, but the living being who has been here all along. In that moment, you realize the ultimate trap of modern life was not just distraction, but the belief that your soul could ever be lost. It was always here, fighting for your attention. Freedom, then, is not endless choice. It is the ability to stand in the presence of reality, your own reality, without needing to escape. It is the strength to suffer consciously rather than unconsciously, to love without manipulation, to act without hiding behind excuses. It is not the freedom of the last man to avoid discomfort, but the freedom of a human being to embrace it and find meaning within it. Dostoyevsky's characters who redeem themselves, Alyosha Karamazov, Sonya Marmeladova, even the tormented Raskolnikov, do so not by perfecting their lives, but by accepting their responsibility and their capacity for love. They discover that grace is not earned by escaping suffering, but by moving through it with eyes open. The soul of modern man, no less than theirs, cannot be healed by more control, more consumption, or more self-optimization. It can only be restored by an act of courage, the choice to inhabit your own life fully. This is the ultimate truth that reorders everything. Suffering is not merely an obstacle to happiness. It is the raw material of meaning. Without it, your freedom is weightless, your identity hollow, your pleasures shallow. With it, faced honestly, integrated into the self, you become capable of depth, of purpose, of real joy. Viktor Frankl understood this when he wrote that those who have a why can bear almost any how. Dostoyevsky lived it, surviving prison camps and near executions to write novels that pulse with moral and spiritual intensity. When you grasp this, even partially, the landscape of your life changes. The distractions lose some of their seduction. The shadow becomes less frightening. The noise of the crowd fades to background. You begin to notice moments of clarity, watching sunlight on a wall, hearing a child's laugh, feeling your own breath, that were always present, but drowned out. These are not small things. They are fragments of reality shining through, proof that meaning was never outside you, only obscured. And with this clarity comes responsibility. You can no longer pretend you don't know. You can still choose distraction, but you'll feel the cost. You can still surrender your agency, but you'll know you're doing it. This is both heavier and lighter than before. Heavier because you see your freedom plainly, lighter because you are no longer fighting phantoms. You are dealing with reality. What does this mean for the soul of modern man? It means the warning was never only about society. It was about you. The modern man Dostoyevsky foresaw is not an abstract figure. It is every one of us who trades our birthright for convenience, who mistakes avoidance for peace, who forgets that freedom is not something granted, but something lived. And the antidote is not nostalgia for the past or withdrawal from the present, but a renewed courage to stand awake in the midst of it all. Perhaps this is what he wanted us to understand, that the soul cannot be automated, curated, or optimized. It can only be met. And in meeting it, you recover not just yourself, but a vision of humanity worth belonging to, one capable of depth in an age of surfaces, of presence in an age of distraction, of love in an age of performance. The final image, then, is this: you, standing at the edge of the same abyss that has haunted modernity for over a century. You look down, expecting darkness, but instead you see a reflection. your own, waiting, patient, unbroken. The noise around you recedes. For the first time in a long time, you take a breath that feels like your own, and in that breath, you understand. Dostoyevsky's warning was not a prophecy of doom, but an invitation to awaken, to take up the burden and gift of freedom, and to live as if your soul matters. Because it does.